Good morning, YouTube. Today I'm going to be talking to you about 5 things that I hate about my Triumph Speed Triple. Let's get going. Alright, so for those of you who are not regulars on the channel, I'll go ahead and tell you guys a little bit about myself and my riding experience. I am 25 years old. I've been riding motorcycles, yeah, because this is a good place to stop. I've been riding motorcycles a good percentage of my life. I've owned everything from dirt bikes, street bikes, Harleys, you name it. I've had this bike for about 1,500 to 1,750 miles. Had the bike on pretty much any type of road you can think of. Now I want to point out that this list is a 5 things I hate about my Triumph. Hate is a strong word. A lot of these things are going to be nitpicky. A lot of these things are going to be, well, duh, it's a sport bike, or duh, it's a naked bike, what do you expect? But it's just one of those things. Just because it's expected doesn't mean it can't be disliked. Also, these are in no particular order. We'll start with number 1, the gas tank. I'm not exactly sure on the size of the gas tank. I'll put the actual size up here on the screen right now. But for a tank that looks this massive when you're sitting on it and feels this massive, it doesn't hold a lot of fuel. Now the range is pretty decent. I want to say the range is anywhere between 150 to 180 miles depending on how you're riding. But it's really the size that bugs me. Give me a range that starts with a 2. You want to stay in your lane? Thank you. Moving on to number 2. This one's going to get me a lot of flack, I know, because a lot of people would consider this a positive, but for me personally, I highly dislike it. And that is the amount of engine brake this bike has. The engine brake literally throws you forward when you let off the throttle. It's something that you almost have to change your riding style to expect that little throw forward. So I find myself kind of gripping the tank with my legs and prepping my body for that lurch forward, because if not, like I said, it throws your body forward. Now, like I said, a lot of people are going to consider that a positive because engine braking, as far as racing goes, is a good thing. I just think for me personally, a little bit on the excessive side. It's almost unnecessarily excessive, but once again, personal preference. Moving on to number 3. Number 3 is going to be the aerodynamics of this bike. I mentioned in the beginning of the video that there's going to be some things that say, well, duh, it's a naked bike. This is what I was referring to. Now, aerodynamics on a naked bike are expected to be less of a full fairing sport bike. Completely understandable. But the amount of wind that you catch on this bike is ridiculous. Now, riding around here 40 miles an hour, the wind's not bad. I mean, honestly, I would say it's probably better than a full fairing sport bike that I've ridden in the past. But when you get to like 60 miles an hour, 70 miles an hour, you're getting blown all over the place. Now, that's also going to have to do with, you know, the shape of the rider. I'm obviously a bigger guy, 6'2", 265 pounds. I'm a big dude, big broad shoulders. I'm going to catch a lot of wind. I will admit, once you tuck into this bike, and it is very easy to tuck into this bike, that your aerodynamics increase substantially. But if I'm just in a relaxed riding position, even a little bit hunched over like I am now, at highway speeds, you get beat to death. Now, they do make some aftermarket windscreens for this, other than this just front fairing here, that apparently do a great job of blocking the wind. I've never ridden with this fairing off, but I have read reviews from people that have ridden with the front fairing off, and they say that this front fairing is making 0 difference, and I believe them 100%. Given that though, on the sides of the bike where the bike is really open, not that much different from a full fairing. Like I said earlier, really where you feel it is in pretty much the belly button up, especially in the head area, especially at highway speeds. Moving on to number 4, the lack of technology. Now this bike is a 2012. It is still a throttle by cable. This is also just your base version. It's not the R. It does have the anti-lock brakes on it though. It does have the ABS, but it is still the base model. But as far as technology goes, you don't get much. You pretty much have your standard tach on the right, speedometer on the left. You have trip A or trip 1, trip 2. You have miles to empty, so it does have a fuel gauge, so that's nice. And you can also set when your blue lights come up here on the tack. And that is pretty much the extent of the technology. I mean, you can't really do much else. Really, the only tech that I would like to see added on to this bike would be some driving modes. Make it throttle by wire, which they did do in the 2016, 2017 versions. So Triumph is listening. I don't care about the fancy colored screen up front. I don't care about that. That doesn't affect my riding ability. But with a bike this torquey, it's nice to be able to change the mode to where you can go through a stoplight and not have to feather the clutch. I was going to put that as something that I hated, was having to feather the clutch when going through an intersection, but that's only due to, one, the lack of technology, and two, the massive amounts of torque. Massive amounts of torque I'm never going to complain about because this bike has power anywhere. And I absolutely love that about this bike. But having to feather my clutch every time I go through an intersection, because first gear, forget about it. Second gear, forget about it. Unless you feather your clutch through an intersection, you're too torquey. You're gonna spin your tires, you're gonna slip out, you're not gonna have a good time, basically. But an addition of some technology would fix that. The only reason I even bring up this point in the first place, though, is because this bike is kind of on the higher end of the price tag in the category of your high CC naked bikes. And I feel like with the price tag that it comes with, some driving modes, even if it was a simple A and B mode, would have been nice to see on this bike. And last but not least, number 5. And this is going to be a problem specific to, I don't want to say US riders, but riders outside of the UK. And that is, the parts on this bike are so extremely hard to find, and when you can find them, they are expensive as shit. For example, I need a rear brake lever. One, I couldn't find anything aftermarket that wouldn't require me to replace the whole rear sets, which I wouldn't mind because the rear sets aren't great. They just didn't make the things that I hate list. But guess how much a stock brake lever for this bike is? $145. Just for the brake lever. That's not the whole assembly, that's just the lever. Also, when trying to find, fairings and bolts and everything, I had to end up going through a Triumph dealer to get bolts for the fairings because every one that I ordered from third party didn't fit. And the bolts were $3 a piece, which, I mean, I guess is pretty standard for bolts, but still, the fact that I had to go through a dealership to get them, not the best. So that's it for my top 5 list. I did want to add on one more, so you can consider this number 6, and that is the rear brake itself. Now, when I originally got this bike, I did get it used. I got it with about 14,000 miles on it, so it did have quite a bit of mileage on it. But I did check I checked the rear brake pads, and they were fine. They still had tons of pad left on them. But the rear brake is just, it's not bad, but it's lacking for sure. And the only reason that I confirm this is that I have a buddy who has a 2016 brand new, and he actually brought that up to me without me even mentioning it. So I didn't ask him, hey, how are the rear brakes? And he said, oh, they kind of suck. He actually brought up, without even me prodding the situation, that his rear brakes were just lackluster, would be a good way to describe it. Now, I'm not too sure, this is what bugs me about this bike, is I'm not too sure if the back brakes are just lackluster or if the front brakes are just so damn good that the rear brakes feel like shit. But I have to lean more towards the lackluster option just because I have to really press down on these brakes, and when I do that, most of the time the ABS kicks in. So I just feel like there should be a middle ground between having to activate the ABS and not really getting any brake action. But guys, there you have it, my top 5 things that I hate about this Triumph Speed Triple. If you have any questions about the Triumph Speed Triple, specifically the 2012, because that's the year I have, go ahead and leave them down in the comment section below. I'll answer them as soon as I possibly can, to the best of my knowledge. Anyways guys, if you like this video, please go ahead and hit that like button. It does help the channel out a lot. If you enjoy my content, go ahead and punch that subscribe button. And as always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.
When you wanna give me that, you purchase a